Hi and welcome to Power Play. I'm Mike Lecouteur in for Vassy Capellos. Tonight, diplomatic thaw.
Canada has quite an actual strong commercial relationship with India. We are one of the largest, for example, foreign investors in India.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announced the start of trade negotiations with India as Canada looks to restart the relationship with Narendra Modi's government. In moments, we'll bring in India's High Commissioner. And Saskatchewan could benefit from those trade talks, so we'll talk to Premier Scott Moe about that trade and the looming pipeline deal, I should say, between Alberta and Ottawa. Then, does it matter when Carney talks to Trump?
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters.
We care about the workers who've lost their jobs and don't have paychecks to make their mortgage payments. Why doesn't he care?
Why is the Prime Minister dismissing a timeline for the restarting of Canada-U.S. trade talks? Well, we're going to ask our front bench about the shift in strategy. Today we have Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie. Plus, journey to the dark side of the moon.
We're hoping our trajectory, our launch date will support us seeing parts of the moon that have never been seen by human eyes.
We speak with Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen on his upcoming mission and the future of space exploration as President Trump eyes NASA's budget. First, though,
the discussion around oil pipelines, for example, and this is the language of Premier Smith of a grand bargain, is absolutely related to other aspects of policy in Alberta, if it were an oil pipeline from Alberta, as well as investment in carbon capture and storage so that these are effectively decarbonized, would be decarbonized barrels. Those discussions are ongoing. They have been constructive. There is a prospect of an agreement. It's not yet finalized.
A memorandum of understanding on energy and climate policy between Alberta and the federal government is expected to be signed later this week. Multiple provincial and federal sources have told CTV News the agreement would include changes to the industrial price on carbon and support for a pipeline to the West Coast. But that second part would also require a carve-out from the current tanker ban. Details of the deal are sparking escalated tensions between Alberta and BC, with the Premier of BC saying that he spoke to the Prime Minister today, adding it was unacceptable for his province to be excluded from the talks.
I underlined for the Prime Minister how unacceptable it was to me to have Saskatchewan and Alberta speaking about matters in British Columbia without British Columbia at the table. This is not something that would happen to Quebec. The one piece that he underlined for me was that the agreement was not finalized at this point, and my expectation and hope is that BC's feedback is incorporated into any final agreement.
The Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe has been a big supporter of moving Canadian energy to Tidewater, and he joins me right now. Hi, Premier. Welcome back to Power Play. Thanks for being here.
To be here, Mike.
So last week you said that you're part of discussions around a memorandum of understanding between Alberta's Danielle Smith and Prime Minister Mark Carney over a possible pipeline to BC's West Coast. In what way are you involved?
In advocating for not only this particular project through the the port-to-port corridor that Western premiers and all premiers discussed at our first ministers meeting, to ensure that not only can this project go forward, but we can make some adjustments to some of the policies that will ensure that we're able to expand our energy industry and reach the aspiration that the Prime Minister has put forward for us to become a global energy superpower. And in order for us to do that, I would say that we need to not choose between one industry and another, or not choose between one area of Canada and another, but we need to really truly come together as all on the same team, Team Canada, and support every project in every industry, in every province across this nation, and that's what Saskatchewan is trying to do. Whether it be the LNG plants in British Columbia, or whether it be this particular pipeline, or whether it be the LNG pipeline taking British Columbia and Alberta LNG maybe to the Hudson Bay.
I just want to be clear, though. Are you actually at the table with Premier Smith and Prime Minister Carney? Because that is how it has been portrayed in the last little while.
Yeah, no, I don't know that. Well, like I said, we wouldn't be a signatory if there is a forthcoming MOU or anything of that nature. Largely, we don't have any significant amount of energy in that particular pipe. However, the indirect benefits to Saskatchewan, and I would say more broadly to Canadians, are tremendous, including those Canadians that live in British Columbia. And so we have been in discussions with the Prime Minister and our federal cabinet colleagues on a number of different topics, including this topic.
So just to be clear, though, you're not part of the negotiation. You're not at the table, because Premier Eby last week seemed to really be quite upset at any kind of notion that you would be at the table with Premier Smith and with Prime Minister Carney without him. I just want to make sure that that's clear. You're not at those negotiations.
Well, let's be clear about what this is as well. This is a federal decision, whether it be around some of the policies, the unconsulted policies, I might add, that were put in, whether it be Bill C-69, the tanker ban, the emissions cap. All of those were unconsulted policies put in by the previous Prime Minister. Alberta and Saskatchewan were not consulted in any of those cases. However, in this case, should this project move forward, and I would expect that if there's some tweaks to those policies, that you will see, private proponents come forward to not only build a new pipeline to the Northwest Coast, but to expand the existing capacity that we have through the TMX, or likely to add pipeline capacity through what was KXL, now maybe is the South Bow project. We need all of these projects to move forward so that we can expand our energy industry of all kinds, whether it's LNG and oil. So we're in discussions with not only Alberta, but the federal government all the time on numerous topics. In this case, we are much, and we've always been clear, we're much more of an advocate on behalf of this project because of what it can do for each and all of us as Canadians.
At the same time, we've heard Premier Eby criticizing both you and Premier Smith, saying that the two of you, quote, don't know what you're talking about with regards to the tanker ban and how it could jeopardize other projects on the northwestern coast of BC. How do you react to that?
Disappointed. I'm really disappointed that an NDP premier would start thinking that this conversation is either or. It's either his projects or someone else's, and always advocating that it should be his. That's it's disappointing. If we truly want to move forward as Canadians, and not only claim to be on Team Canada, but actually be on Team Canada, we need to be supportive of every project in every industry in every province across this nation. And I sure hope that the LNG proposed projects in BC can move forward. I sure hope that this proposed project from Danielle Smith and Alberta can move forward. I sure hope the proposal that Premier Eby had around the expansion of the TMX pipeline can move forward as well. And I'd like to see the KXL conversation, or whatever that potential egress pipeline capacity could be to the south, would also move forward. We're in additional discussions around our nuclear transition and our nuclear ambitions here in Saskatchewan with the federal government. So there's a lot going on. It all needs to happen, and we need to be, I think, as Canadians, supportive of every project in every industry, in every province. And I would hope that Premier Eby can find his way to that space. You were also in Washington last week, meeting with a number of members of President Trump's cabinet. Did any of those meetings give you any hope that talks between Canada and the U.S. could resume shortly, with a bit of a sort of footnote here that we do understand that the Prime Minister is considering a trip to D.C. next week? Yeah, I would hope that those talks can resume and resume sooner rather than later. The current environment we're in, and from Saskatchewan's perspective and Canada's, our largest three markets are not free and open trade right now, whether it be the United States of America, India, or China. Those are the largest three markets that we access as a province, and largely significant markets for Canada, and I would say upside potential in all three of them. And so I am confident that we are going to find our way back to the table sooner rather than later, and I hope that's the case because the current tariff-riddled environment that we have is really hurting not only the bottom lines of the industries that are creating wealth and jobs in our nation, but you saw it in the federal budget. It's really hurting the bottom lines of our federal government, which is ours, our budget, our money, but is also going to be hurting the revenue lines on each of the provincial budgets as they come forward as well. So I'm hopeful that we're going to find a path, and the sooner the better. But did you hear anything concrete
from Secretaries Bessent, Lutnick, or even Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative, while you were down there? Anything that gives you any type of confidence that those trade negotiations will resume shortly?
I think there is a realization that we do need to get back to the negotiating table. I think there's maybe some differences in opinion on what that path forward might look like. And, the traditional trade deals that we see, over the years gone by are negotiate. At the end of 12 or 18 months, you sign one trade deal. I'm not sure that is the environment that we have the opportunity to participate in today. It may be more of a one deal and then another deal and then another deal and try to, find our way through what is a very different negotiating environment than even what it was 5 or 10 years ago. But there was an appreciation and an understanding that there are advantages to some degree of free and open trade between our nations. There's some challenges around certain industries that are going to be difficult for us to work out.
Yeah, canola is another industry that's been a challenge, especially in your province. It's been the subject of massive tariffs from China. Now, last month on CTV's Question Period, China's ambassador to Canada did say that if Canada was to remove tariffs on EVs, on electric vehicles, it would consider to remove tariffs on canola. Is that something that you've discussed with the Prime Minister, and would you be comfortable with that type of trade-off?
Well, I've said again, this is an opportunity for us to be at the table with not only the United States of America, but the Chinese officials as well. And I see that starting to happen as well as that relationship seems to be opening up. And I would say that it's much more complex than that. I would say that we should be at the table because there's an opportunity for us to not only get back to the current trade that we had, whether it be canola, pulses, pork, and seafood, but actually to go beyond that into other products as well. China is a growing market and it's a large market. Not to say it's an easy market or there isn't sensitivities to doing business with China, into the future. However, there is an opportunity for us, I think, to expand on the trade, not only with China, but with India and other countries around the world as well.
I understand you say it's complex, and it really is, but the ambassador, when he was sitting in this studio talking to my colleague Vashi Kapelos, he made it sound like one would flow out of the other, that if Canada removed the tariffs on EVs, that they would be looking to remove the tariffs on canola. Is that something that you would want to negotiate? And again, have you discussed it with Prime Minister Carney to make sure that your province could get that kind of relief?
Yes, and I have discussed it not only with Prime Minister Carney but other ministers as well as to what opportunity do we have to move forward. We see in Mexico, for example, they have a 50% tariff on Chinese EVs. We see the European Union, I think they're 35 or 40% tariff on Chinese EVs, and so there is a path for us to negotiate our way forward. And I have confidence that the federal government is finding their way to that table and to that space. And yes, I have talked with Prime Minister Carney as well as Minister Anand about the challenges we have in not only China, how they're related to the United States of America, but also the challenges we have and the options we have to move forward with India as well.
So I've got to ask then, what has been the response on the other side? What has Prime Minister Carney said in terms of his willingness to work with you on this and to remove those tariffs on Chinese EVs?
Again, he had met not only with the Prime Minister in New York most recently, but had also had a sidebar with President Xi. And I think it's exactly those kind of discussions that are happening as we speak right now. And what, does the future hold for not only our Chinese EV policy and what that tariff rate might be, what the response is from the United States of America, and then ultimately what is not the quid pro quo, but what is the return policy from China when it comes to not only canola, but pulses, pork, and seafood as well. So those discussions, I'm quite confident are actually happening as we speak. And I have talked to the Prime Minister as recently as last Saturday night prior to the Grey Cup game about just this. And
do you have any faith that that'll get resolved shortly?
That would be the intent, and I do have faith that we will get it resolved. I don't know how quickly that will be as we have this, myriad, I said, 3 of our largest markets are currently being restricted by, tariff or non-tariff barriers. We've dealt with this from a provincial perspective, whether it be with China, whether it be with India, or in specific markets in the U.S. We've never dealt with it with all three markets at the same time, and to the extent and degree of the products that are being impacted by these tariffs in these three very, very large markets and the most significant markets that we have. And so this is a challenging time, and you're seeing those challenges bear out in the federal budget revenue lines, and you're going to see it in provincial budget lines as well. Our goal and our work as a province is to do our level best to support the federal government, Prime Minister Carney, and our ministers to get to an agreement in these three large markets. That's when Saskatchewan does well, and when Saskatchewan does well, we contribute to a better nation, and that's the goal.
Okay, Premier, we're going to have to leave it there. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, thanks so much for taking time.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Coming up, relationship reset. Canada and India have launched an agreement to start trade talks as both countries work to repair strained relations. India's High Commissioner Dinesh Patnaik joins us next.
Does your government view India as a reliable trading partner?
In terms of trade, yes, we do. You can be both a reliable trading partner, and there will be some sources of friction. What I will say, with respect to India, is that we don't have a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with India, one of the world's largest and fastest-growing economies. The ability to have more effective trade with them, to scale that trade with them, would be greatly helped by that.
That was Prime Minister Mark Carney just before returning home from the G20 summit. While in Johannesburg, he announced Canada and India have agreed to launch negotiations towards a new trade agreement. Now, we had a lengthy meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday as both countries worked to reset a strained relationship. Now, 2 years ago, Canada paused talks for a broader trade pact. It came after former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau alleged agents of the Indian government were involved in the assassination of Canadian Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Trade tensions with the U.S. and a change in leadership have led to a thaw in relations between the two countries. And Prime Minister Modi even invited Carney to India next year. That new diplomatic direction was just part of the discussion I had earlier today with India's High Commissioner to Canada, Dinesh Patnaik. Hi, High Commissioner. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Last month, you told my colleague Vashi Kapelos on Question Period that Canada is not yet a reliable energy supplier. So I'm wondering what's changed in the last 30 days that has led to India to agree to launch negotiations for a trade deal with Canada.
If you remember what I told Vasi, I said that it's not yet a reliable energy supplier, but it can be if we put the right framework in place. And what we are trying to do with Canada now is to put a right framework in place, a framework which allows both sides to be able to move things, logistics, trade, all the other things. Moving oil and gas takes a large amount of pipelines, road network, rail network, and all this we need to put in place. And what both the prime ministers have agreed to in South Africa is to be able to work towards a comprehensive economic partnership which takes into account all these issues, to ensure that the bilateral trade between both sides, which is about $23 billion right now, to go up to $50 billion. And so that's the plan. The plan is for both sides to work together on a comprehensive economic partnership, which allows both sides to be able to put in place the right logistics, the right infrastructure, right legal structure, and the right free trade agreements to be able to achieve this.
So is there something that has significantly changed in that time when you had that discussion with my colleague to just the other day when they said that they can move forward? Or do you think that there's still a lot to be worked out here?
No, you see, given the fact that we are trying to achieve something which is very, very ambitious, we need to put in place the right infrastructure and the right legal and other structures to be able to achieve it. Now, we cannot just go from 0 to 100 on the same day. It has to be a work in progress where we work together on different issues. Now, we have all kinds of issues on which we can work together. Oil and gas, of course, is one. Renewable energy is another, including nuclear, which is a very big field. We have agri-foods, we have fertilizers, we have AI, quantum, mining, critical minerals, you name it. I mean, in everything, there is a lot we can do together. And we are putting in place the kind of structure that is needed to achieve that goal.
In that interview with Vashi, you had said that you don't want a supplier who's going to say, quote, okay, I'm going to supply you today, and then tomorrow to say, no, I have a problem with you. With that, in that context, last month, India did put a 30% tariff on Canadian yellow peas. In 2017, your country also had a 50% duty on pea imports. So are those the actions of a trading partner that Canada can really trust?
You have to understand one thing: when trading partners work together, you create the structure that makes you both reliable. And so the point is to work out a structure where short-term fluctuations can be handled by both sides. And this is exactly what both the prime ministers are putting in place.
But with respect, the fact that India did just impose increased tariffs on yellow peas, is that a good starting point for these negotiations? And do you think that that sends any kind of signal to Canada that India is a trusted partner?
You have to look at the context. Before 2023, we had a ban on import of peas and pulses. And after 23, we opened it up, and about 4.5 million tons of peas and pulses were sent to India. Now, India has a large farming community which is a sustenance farmers which depend on the production of pulses for their sustenance, not as a cash crop. And this is about 250 million people who are involved in the farming industry. Now, the farming industry this year has been troubled a lot by imports from across the world, not just Canada. It's Canada, Russia, Latin America. There's a whole lot of countries, Africa, from where pulses come into India. We are a large consumer of pulses. Now, the farming industry lobby is strong enough to ask for the fact that there is a huge price difference between the minimum support price that is given to farmers in India by the government and others, and the landed cost of the price of peas that are landing there. And so the 30% was to adjust for that. And this happened because we still don't have a treaty, an agreement between both sides to have tariff quotas or to regulate tariffs or to work out things that is needed. The farmer lobbies can create this smaller fluctuation, like the consumer lobby keeps prices down. The farmer lobbies want higher prices for farmers, for sustenance farmers. You have heard of farmer suicides in India. So in India, it's a very sensitive topic, and we have worked and we have discussed with Premier Scott Moore, with Premier Daniel Smith today. I'm in Alberta today, and they understand the compulsions, and we are trying to work out a long-term agreement where we can both make sure that between Canada and India, the fluctuations affect us less.
In a wider context, can you understand how some Canadians might be concerned around deepening trade with India? Because people may look at that issue with tariffs on peas. Others look on the public safety issue because of the ongoing investigation and allegations of Indian diplomats being linked to homicides and extortions in Canada. What can you tell to Canadians to try and assuage some of the fears that they may have about deepening trade relations with India?
No, I tell them to look at the overall picture. Do diplomats actually do the kind of accusations that the Canadians have put out? Nobody does it. It doesn't happen. India doesn't do things like this. This is something which, accusations are easy. I can sit and accuse anybody of anything. That's not what comes out of this. What comes out of it is, let's work together. If there are accusations, let's see how we can discuss. We have a dialogue. We try to put together things which makes people safe not only security-wise, but food security, economic security, energy security, security of all kinds. And that is what we are having. We're not only having a dialogue on security on the streets, we're having a dialogue on food security, on energy security, on economic security, on AI, quantum. It's an overall relationship. Now, you look at the relationship between India and Canada. You have 2.8 million Indians in Canada. You have a vibrant education industry which is linked with India. You have vibrant diasporas which is linked with India. You have a bilateral trade which is substantial, about 23 billion, which we want to make up to 50 billion. Look at all this. Look at a country around the world which can offer you all this and having the same values as you. Democratic principles, freedom of press, rule of law. Where is the country that you can look? This is two countries which need to work together. We have no option in this regard. India and Canada have a foundational relationship which needs to work in such a manner that we can both do it together for the benefit of our peoples.
Canada has been very vocal about diversifying their trade away from the United States, especially in this uncertain time in that relationship. Are you at all concerned that that could change once the Trump administration is no longer in power?
See, what will happen in the future, I cannot predict right now. But the mood right now across the world, and it's not just Canada and US, but in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, everywhere, the whole idea is diversification of supply chains. Because countries have realized that they cannot just depend on one source for all of their products. So you need to diversify. Diversification is not just a Canadian issue. It's an issue for every country in the world. And every country is trying to put in place legal frameworks, free trade agreements, bilateral agreements, diversification of supply chains to make sure that we are able to get the best from across the world. In fact, it is good for global trade because global trade needs to be open and not closed down to having bilateral trade only between countries which have commonalities between them.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Indian High Commissioner to Canada, Dinesh Patnaik, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still to come, Prime Minister Mark Carney says he's in no hurry to resume trade talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. But we're also hearing he could be heading to D.C. next week. So what's behind the shifting strategy? Well, the front bench is standing by. Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie. They're going to break it all down right after this.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. I look forward to speaking to the president soon, but I don't have a burning issue to speak with the president about right now. When America wants to come back and have the discussions on the trade side, we will have those discussions.
That was Prime Minister Mark Carney's response yesterday when he was asked about when he last spoke to U.S. President Donald Trump. Trade talks have been on pause for the last month after Ontario's anti-tariff ad angered the president. Carney had said he was in no hurry to talk to Trump and will do so when it's, quote, appropriate. It led to this reaction from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons, giving a contrast to Carney's elbows up pitch during the federal election.
The Prime Minister says, who cares? All of us on this side of the House care about the communities that are being emptied out in our forestry, the steel workers in Hamilton who don't have jobs to pay their mortgages. We care about those people. Why doesn't he?
But wait, there's another twist to this story now. The federal government and a source in the federal government has confirmed to CTV News that the Prime Minister is now considering a trip to Washington next week. So what should Canadians make of the mixed messaging? Let's bring in our front bench. Joining me right now here in studio is former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt. She is the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair. And the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief, Rob Benzie. Welcome to Monday, all. Brian, this is tough to know really where to begin because you look at this and it's like taking a tough stance overseas, and then once you land in Canada, realizing maybe how it landed, a bit of a shift. What's your read of why this is now seemingly muddied?
My sense is not necessarily that it was a tough stance he was taking. I think he was just a bit annoyed. This is the sort of political gamesmanship that I think Carney is not really used to. He's obviously getting the experience quite quickly, going right in the top job in his first foray into elected office. But essentially, the jam that you get with that question is, have you spoken to the president? And if he says no, it looks like he can't get a meeting. It looks like he can't get the audience. It looks like he's not doing anything. If he says yes, then obviously he has to give details. And in this case, that obviously wasn't the case. So he has to say no. And the follow-up is, well, why aren't you reaching out? Can't you get a chat with the person that has basically the most important file for Canada at the moment? Can you not, and are you not reaching out constantly? So it's just this political gamesmanship that I don't think he enjoys, I don't think he likes, and frankly, I don't think he's necessarily got a lot of experience at it. So who cares was kind of a flippant response to not accepting the frame of the question. And because of that, I think they're now sort of trying to change a channel and say, well, of course he cares, and he's going to go to D.C. when it's appropriate, and apparently it's appropriate now.
Yeah, but Lisa, I mean, it is those two words that I think everybody is really gleaning onto. Who cares? And really that, flippant, dismissive, use the term that you want. But it really seems like in that moment, he is just sitting there going, why are you even asking me this question? And then there's that shift when we come back to Ottawa.
Yeah. I got to say that there are two gifts to the Conservative Party of Canada this week. One was the announcement that Steve Atthouse is going to be the campaign manager for the next election. And the second was that soundbite. Who cares? I mean, wow, what an error in terms of serving something up. And trust me, they're going to make a meal out of that over and over and over again. I mean, it's really tough. I know it can be frustrating in the moment, but you do have to remember that everything you say is going to get clipped. Let me just turn to the Donald Trump stuff for 1 second. I think he has to go. And the reason why he has to go is FIFA's giving Donald Trump a peace prize. I don't know if you caught this in the news. They're making up a peace prize and they're giving it to Donald Trump there. I think it's a high risk if we don't have somebody there kissing the ring, quite frankly. And that's probably why they're trying to suss out whether or not the prime minister is going to go down.
Okay, but Tom, then if he does go down and, as Lisa said, goes to kiss the ring, then what happens to the, let's even forget the who cares now. I mean, elbows up feels like it was a year and a half ago, even though it was 6 months ago. I mean, it's almost like, this is it's happening in silos in his mind, but clearly the rest of us are sitting back and going, well, wait a second, we're trying to square all this.
Fair enough, but I'm not quite ready to give up on my take on who cares, Mike, and I'll simply say this. I found it wonderfully refreshing, and I found it the exemplar of elbows up. It's like, I'm not going to worry about that blubbering fourth grader who dominates the news cycle day in, day out. I'm going to talk to him when we have something substantive to talk about, and by the way, the talks are continuing behind the curtains. That's exactly the message. Lisa, of course, is 100% right. I had somebody actually send me the script for an ad that starts with, he doesn't care about workers. He doesn't care about the cost of food. He does, and it's who cares? Who cares? It's lovely. Yeah. It is a political communications gift, but it's going to wear thin, and he will get his meeting with Trump, and he will kiss the ring. I did not hear about the Fédération Internationale du Football Amateur giving a World Peace Prize in the shape of a soccer ball, presumably. I had missed that one today, but why am I not surprised? I mean, if you understand Donald Trump's game, he was threatening to change venues because he doesn't like the city of Boston and so forth. So why not give him the Nobel Peace Prize that he didn't get? Give it from a football association. Soccer in our parliaments. It's amazing. We are dealing with a 10-year-old, and we've got to play the game. And I love the authenticity. I'm sorry to be the outlier here. I absolutely loved that authentic moment from our prime minister. There are probably two other words that he could substitute there. At least he didn't use those. He said, "Who cares?"
Yeah, I don't think he is a fuddle-duddle type of guy, but Rob, I'm not sure.
You guessed where I was going. Well done, Mike.
Yeah, I know. And, showing my age again, Tom, I am of a certain vintage as well. Rob, are you okay now? I mean, you could either be the tying person with Tom here, or what's your read of it?
You know what? I think that I'm going to play the reporter here because I play one on television. And he was being dismissive of a reporter, and he was finding the question beneath him. And I think he was reverting to the Mark Carney we saw on that trip to England just after he became prime minister. And when he didn't like being questioned about his personal finances, he was very, very dismissive. I think he found the question beneath him, and he was impatient, and that's why he said that. Although I do have to give Lisa kudos for giving her former colleague Steve Atthouse a shout out because that is probably a good sign for Mr. Poilievre in Ottawa. But I also think that Mark Carney being dismissive of a reporter, Pierre Poilievre really isn't on great solid ground when it comes to his treatment of the media. We all remember the apple crunching thing. I mean, they're both in that way feel that sometimes we ink-stained wretches are beneath them. And I get it. If I were a politician, I would find it annoying if reporters were asking me pesky questions and maybe gotcha questions. But that is what Mark Carney signed up for. So I think he looked a little too aloof there, Mike, and it wasn't a good look. And who cares? I don't think he was talking about who cares about having a trade deal. I think he was like, who cares, you idiot reporter? Why are you asking me that?
Yeah, and in closing, Brian, do you think that the Prime Minister, to quote Rob Benzie there, because I was on that trip, do you think that Mark Carney needs to look inside himself now?
Well, one thing that I can tell you for sure, one thing I have no doubt is Lisa, Tom, and I have never felt that way towards any of the reporters. I can guarantee that.
Just me.
On behalf of my colleagues.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay. Oh, wow. See, Vashti's away, and they think they can get away with anything now. Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Brian knows it. Just for this subject, we're going to come back with the front bench, though. We're going to look ahead to this week's expected memorandum of understanding between Alberta and Ottawa. Can the Prime Minister balance energy development with opposition to a new pipeline? More on that right after this.
We have been talking with that proponent, the government, the potential proponent, that government of Alberta. We have been working on, as has been widely reported, memorandum of understanding. That is a work in process right now. I think we are getting close to a place, and when that gets done, we'll have some more clarity.
So the Minister of Natural Resources says Ottawa and Alberta are getting close to announcing a memorandum of understanding on energy. Multiple provincial and federal sources have told CTV News the agreement would entail changes to the industrial price on carbon and support for a pipeline to the West Coast. That pipeline is contingent on a carve-out of the current tanker ban off of BC's coast. Right now, though, Premier David Eby says that's a non-starter. So how does the Prime Minister navigate this very public political divide? Let's bring back our front bench. Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie. Now, he has been trying to, Brian, bridge this, but he also hasn't been out there talking a lot about how he's going to manage this. It does have to go through BC, and David Eby has been very public in saying, hey, I'm not even at the table. Is this a misstep by Mark Carney in how they're managing this right now?
That's the question. What I find fascinating about this from a kind of political lens is one could ask themselves, just sort of in the pure theoretical calculation of votes and losing vote, getting votes and losing votes. Why would the Prime Minister and his team do this, right? Is it because they're trying to gain votes in Alberta and gain seats? One would say, well, that doesn't really make much sense. They could maybe potentially be taking a little bit of hit in BC if it becomes a real big conflict. So it's really fascinating, and I've been thinking about it from a political lens. If that is indeed one of the considerations that they are putting into this, it could be really that this government recognizes that with everything that they promised during the campaign, everything they've promised since, they really got to start to show that there's going to be some major projects happening. Mm-hmm. I think it kind of goes back to that. I mean, they've made that definitely one of the core pieces of their focus and priorities in terms of how to deal with the U.S. trade conflict. So to me, really, maybe it's all substance, and that's the only consideration. Yeah. But from a political lens, one could maybe argue that really what they're saying to themselves, look, if we don't deliver on some of these major projects, that's going to be what hurts us the most politically. So we got to get some of these done, and maybe this is one of the ones that they've honed in on.
And specifically in Alberta, Lisa, maybe to Brian's point, what is the cost benefit here when you consider the amount of votes or seats, really, that they could lose in BC versus what they could gain in Alberta? And you think that that's part of the calculation?
No, I don't. I think this is an economic calculation, to be honest, Mike. I mean, the reality is that there is going to be a lot of pain in the medium term when it comes to the economy of Canada. And as a result, they need to figure out how they're going to get some resources moving quickly and revenues flowing in, because we do depend upon equalization in this country. And you need to have Alberta forging ahead and doing really well in order to ensure that other parts of the country that may get absolutely hammered by Donald Trump in the next 5 to 10 years, that they have something to rely upon. So it is a big federal play. I think he's looking at what can be done quickly. And as a result, that's the MOU that we're seeing. And I think they're just codifying the things that industry has indicated to them has to happen in order for them to think about investing in these pipelines.
Yeah, just to be clear, it's not about my ego today. Lisa's video went. That's why we came back to me.
Good,
but
though,
what
Mike.
she had to
you
say,
look so good.
what she had to say was fantastic, and I'm hoping I did everybody proud with how intently I was listening there.
You should have lip synced it, Mike. You should have lip synced it.
Yeah, I mean, well, Lisa, I can never predict what's coming out of your mouth. Let's be honest. So, I mean, I don't think I would have been good at that.
True story.
Tom, let's get away from me for a second here, because God knows people see enough of me. So
I don't know what's going on.
The business case
here
that the Prime Minister has to actually present. Do you think he's done an effective job right now of trying to explain it to Canadians ahead of this MOU?
Well, on top of a budget that was anything but environmentally friendly, he's going to have some explaining to do, including to his backer on that budget, Elizabeth May, the head of the Green Party. With regard to British Columbia, they're going through exactly what they went through with the current pipeline that cost Canadian taxpayers $35 billion, Trans Mountain. This would seem to be a new iteration of Northern Gateway. If that's the case, Mike, I'll allow myself to put another element on the table, which is the rights of Indigenous peoples. Canada is a signatory of the United Nations Declaration on the rights of Indigenous peoples. If you go to places like the Douglas Channel and realize the strong opposition that's going to be there, that United Nations Declaration requires prior informed consent. So anybody who thinks that this is a deal that's going to be made on a very big table, on a nice big piece of paper between the government of Alberta and the government of Ottawa, is forgetting that there is another level of government in this country, and that's the government of the Indigenous peoples. And they have profound rights that are going to have to be respected here. You can't wish those away. You can't Bill C5 those away. So I think that a part of this is Carney answering the strong request, that the desire from Alberta to have another pipeline. He's not going to get caught saying no, because that would help the Conservatives too much. He's going to say yes, but he knows there is no proponent. I don't think that the government of Alberta has any, I don't think it's going to be cheaper than the $35 billion that we paid for the other one. And I don't see that anybody in the private sector is going to pony up that kind of cash. But all those considerations aside, Indigenous rights are going to be a key issue here, and I don't see any way around it.
Yeah, and I don't know what the going rate for a pipeline is. I haven't checked recently. But Rob, how much of this is going to be a learning experience for this Carney government in terms of what Tom was just saying is, making sure that you have everybody at the table, and especially with Indigenous rights and trying to sort of thread that needle. I mean, you and I, but especially you've covered a number of these types of things in the past where you try and get all provinces on board or multiple provinces on board, and then add to that layer now the duty to consult. I mean, this is not going to be a quick conversation with the MOU or not, right?
No, exactly, Mike. And I mean, remember, this is something, the C5 stuff, they had to kind of reiterate the pledge of the duty to consult in that, because there were a lot of concerns about this type of a move. But I actually think there's another wrinkle to this, and it's the national unity wrinkle. You've got Alberta secessionists who may or may not be a real phenomenon. I don't know. A lot of the polling we know is a bit sus, as my children would say. But it is still a concern. And I think that that's something that Mr. Carney has to worry about. You don't want to give Alberta separatists any kind of any more of a cudgel to hammer you with. So there's that. The other thing, too, is that this actually would sell well here in Ontario. Premier Doug Ford and his progressive Conservative government that works very closely with Mr. Carney's Liberal government in Ottawa, they are really, really big proponents of this. They've done their own MOU with Alberta and with Saskatchewan, notably Manitoba. It kind of leapfrogs Manitoba. I don't know how it's going to work. But the reason is, here in Ontario, Doug Ford wants a new customer for Ontario steel. Ontario steelmakers have been hammered by Trump tariffs, and there really is a hope that a mega project like this will help that industry. There's lots of technology that would benefit, technology companies in Ontario that would benefit. It would create a lot of jobs. So there's an economic element as well as the national unity piece.
Yeah, Lisa, speak to that. I mean, Rob just talking about how that concern over trying to make sure, because, Danielle Smith did say this is a test of Canada as a nation.
Oh, it certainly is. And it may not have unanimity across the country, clearly, in terms of whether or not people are in favor of an oil pipeline. But the cost benefit analysis, to your question earlier, is pretty simple. It does come down to dollars and cents. And you can see that the Carney government is trying to match what investors are saying needs to happen in order to invest in this country and to see some kind of flow of buildings and projects having to come to fruition. I mean, the Prime Minister is touring all around the world. Every country he's going to, he's pushing on invest in Canada. But you actually have to show that you're willing to change the things in Canada before you're going to get investors to want to pony up the money. And that's part of it as well. Be very interesting to see what's going to end up happening with respect to the final analysis of the MOU. If they're amending clean electricity regulations, I would say take a look to see whether or not there's going to be benefits to data centers as well. Another problem for Alberta, which could be rectified with this MOU coming.
Last 20 seconds to you, Brian.
I think that the Prime Minister has come in with a clear mandate to deal with the economic concerns that have arisen given the U.S. trade conflict, and this falls into that. And I believe that they think that they're going to be judged politically by whether they accomplish some big things economically.
Okay, and we will be tuning in to see if it indeed does happen later this week. Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, Rob Benzie, thank you all for being here. Got to take a quick break afterwards. Blasting off to the moon, Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen will join us in studio just ahead of his trip right around the moon. We'll be right back. Before heading into space on the Artemis II mission next year, Jeremy Hansen stopped by our studios to talk about the significance of the mission and his expectations. Here's some of that conversation now. I want to take a bit of a wider view, which is almost funny to say to somebody who is going to space. When you consider how much of this space race is going on right now, Canada's role is an important one. Are you at all concerned that we have heard from the U.S. administration that they're looking at possibly making cuts of upwards of 24% to the budget of NASA? Are you concerned about future missions going forward and something that you're really pushing forward right now because you're setting the table for Artemis 3? Are you concerned that NASA may not be at the table as much in the future?
Well, there's different ways to look at that. I believe at the end of the day, you know, that what has driven us to this point to take on these big challenges, that drive is still going to be there. We're always going to question the dollars and cents of things, and I think that's healthy. A little bit of debate there's nothing wrong with that. So I guess I don't rest in concern, but I know that it has always been hard fought. And when you're doing visionary things, it's always going to be challenged, always has been, it always will be. It's just sort of par for the course. But I'm a firm believer in science. I think the ripple effects of that and the innovation that comes from setting big goals and then bringing a collaboration together to solve them. Like I live it every day. I see it. It's extraordinary what people come up with. And when they have like this common vision and they just refuse to fail. I mean, they have failures along the way, but they refuse to give up and they go until they solve it. I see the rewards of that. So I'll always be an advocate for it. And anyone that's willing to listen, I'll spend time explaining some of those wins that I've seen.
And you can watch the full interview on ctvnews.ca. Thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. Stay with us, though. Your top headlines are just ahead.